a ridiculous number of times over the past few years, and it's become kind of an obsession. And if I'm not at Disney, I'm usually researching and planning a trip and kind of thinking ahead. I've had the luxury for probably about the past 5 years that we really always were kind of in, okay, we know we're going to go again in July of next year. At the current time, we do not have another trip planned, but that can change pretty quickly as it has in the past. So we have been, I think now as a family, I've lost count, my kids could tell you, and we were, I don't even know, my husband Edgar is here. I don't, do you know how many times we've been recently? Since the first trip, I'll just start by telling you that the first trip we really took as a family was in 2009. And we planned the trip actually shortly after my father passed away. I thought it would be kind of a good idea for us to take this big Disney vacation. We hadn't taken really most of our children. We had been there when the two younger ones were really little babies, but they obviously didn't remember it. So we started planning that trip, and before we actually left for that trip, and when we got to Florida, it turns out that I was pregnant. And so I've actually spent a couple trips at Disney with morning sickness, which is not really a fun way to go. But so we did go, and we did have a good time. But after that trip, we kind of felt like we were really Disneyed out, and we didn't need to go back for a while. And we didn't go back until 2011. And then since then, we've been at least once a year, sometimes twice, one time, 3 times. So as I said, in the middle of, if we aren't actually there, then I'm usually researching and planning. And so a lot of people do have a tendency to say, hey, I have some questions for you, or I want to ask you about Disney. And I usually start with a list of questions that I'm going to get to later. So first, I'm going to go through, and I know for some of you, this may be something that you don't know, and for some, it may be, this may be very basic stuff. But the first thing I want to talk about is that there is a difference between Walt Disney World and Disneyland. Walt Disney World is in Florida. There are 4 theme parks there. It covers a tremendous amount of space. There are also several resorts, as opposed to Disneyland, which is in California. It's in Anaheim, where they have 2 parks, but you can literally walk from one park to the next. They're about 100 yards separated. So it's a much different experience than in Florida, where it's about a half hour to 45 minutes to get from one park to another, kind of depending on what transportation you're using. And then Disneyland also actually only has 2 on-site resorts. They rely mostly on other hotels that are in the area. They also cater mostly to locals. They aren't really as much of a vacation destination spot as Disney World is. So there are some differences between the 2 places and the way that they do things. And as I mentioned, Disney World is very big. It is the same size as San Francisco. I thought these were some interesting facts. So it covers 40 square miles. It is its own entity, sort of. It has its own water district. They kind of have their own, not their own government, but their own kind of part. They don't belong to any one particular city. They employ more than 60,000 people in Orlando. 50,000 people visit each day, and I just did the math really quickly, assuming that they were all paying for that one-day admission. That's like $4 million just in admissions every day at the park. And then it's also estimated that 4% of all amateur photos are taken at a Disney park. If you're on Facebook, you probably agree with that. Seems like there are a lot of pictures from there. And there are more than 27,000 rooms on Disney property. So there are 4 theme parks, 2 water parks, and then there's Downtown Disney, which is going to be renamed Disney Springs pretty soon. It is actually under renovation right now, and I can attest to that, like literally right now. We were just I forgot to mention, we were actually just at Disney about a month ago. It was our last trip. We went down with some family. So those were the pictures that we were playing beforehand. Most of those were from that last trip. The Magic Kingdom, I love these construction photos. I think they're kind of cool. The one on the top right, that X is actually where the castle is. So that was from when it was being constructed. But it is the park that most people refer to as Walt Disney World. But it's actually called the Magic Kingdom, and it did open in 1971. It's the place that has the utilidors, which are the tunnels that go underneath the park. So you probably have heard about those, that's where the employees do kind of all of their staging. They're not actually underneath. Disneyland is actually built on top of them. If you watch, there's lots of documentaries where they kind of talk about that. It's kind of fascinating that they actually built it up. So when you walk into the Magic Kingdom, you actually are walking like up to the 2nd story, basically. And that is the home of Cinderella Castle, which is the famous icon there. Epcot is the second park that opened in 1982, and that stands for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. It was originally meant to be an actual community, but after Walt Disney died, it kind of evolved into plans for another park. And then the third park is Hollywood Studios, which originally opened as MGM Studios. They changed that name in 2008. I didn't even know that, I think, till we went in 2009. A lot of people still call it MGM. And then Animal Kingdom, which opened in 1998. And there is also a big renovation project, or addition actually, going on at Animal Kingdom right now, where they're building an Avatar land for whatever that's worth. So that won't be open until 2017. So if you're planning to go soon, you won't see it just yet. There are 2 water parks also currently at Walt Disney World. We actually just went to Blizzard Beach on this last trip. It was the first time we've gone to a water park. In the past when we've been there, it's either not been a good time of year, or we just didn't want to give up a park day to go to the water park. And I will tell you that we learned that the water park was a really great thing for our family. All of our kids, our children are age 4 through 13. All of them had something they could do. They had a really good time. We were able to add that water park option to our tickets for just $26 a person, which I can talk about later. So for the value we got, it was really good. It was a lot of fun. I wanted to get to Typhoon Lagoon too. It just didn't happen on this trip, so save it for the list for the future. And then there's also Downtown Disney, which is basically a shopping district. And I put this graphic in because that's kind of what it's changing to, but there's no admission at Downtown Disney. You can walk in anytime, you can park there for free. There's restaurants and some fun things to do down there as well. So when it comes to resorts, this is always one of the big questions and one of the things that people ask me a lot about. As far as being on site, there are 3 different levels of resorts at Disney, and they do have kind of different amenities. They're a little bit nicer, some, or at least they're said to be. I've never heard anybody who stayed at a value resort who didn't love it. So there are 3. There's the value, the moderate, and the deluxe. And I listed them here and gave you an idea. Like right now, the Disney website says their value resorts start at $85 a night. So it is definitely affordable to stay on site, assuming that your family fits into these rooms and that you're okay staying at one of these rooms and like the location and can get to it and all of that. The moderate resorts, right now it says start at $162 a night. The deluxe resorts, it's saying start at $284 a night. Just don't get too caught up in those prices though, because all of that becomes kind of a moot point once you get involved in planning. But it kind of gives you a basic idea. And there are, you know, some of these are going to be closer to the parks. I mean, there's just different reasons to stay at different hotels. So I made up a list of what I call Disney-ese. One of the things that I spend a lot of time doing, and I think a lot of people when they're planning, is they spend a lot of time kind of looking around on the internet. And there are a lot of message boards with a lot of really good information, but they tend to speak in kind of these acronyms a lot. So I put just a few of these out here. I think they're probably pretty self-explanatory, and a couple of things are things that we'll talk about later, but one of the big ones to know about is ADR, which is Advanced Dining Reservation. That's kind of an important one if you're planning a trip there. Fast Pass, sometimes you'll also see that called Fast Pass Plus, just because the system recently changed, so it technically is now Fast Pass Plus, but it's kind of the same system that they've had for a while. The 4 parks, pass holders, Disney Vacation Club, meet and greet, that's a big one for a lot of people with children, if they're worried about meeting their favorite characters. The magic bands, I have some here, and we can pass them around if you want to see them. These are the new tickets. I'm going to talk about these a little bit later too. And then quick service versus table service at restaurants has to do with the dining reservations. Star Wars weekend is a big one. If you're a Star Wars fan, it's a great time to go. If you're not a Star Wars fan, or if you're just really worried about crowds, it might be a good time to avoid going to Disney because they do pull really big crowds. So where do you start? That's what everybody always wants to know when they ask me, where do I even start? And so these are the questions that I usually ask people when they email me and say, can you please give me some tips or some pointers or some advice? I usually ask them to start narrowing down a few things for me because there are a lot of different facets. And so it really comes down to, you know, when are you going? How many days do you want to be there? Do you want to stay on site or not? How important is dining, is eating at some of those nicer, more famous restaurants? Do you want to eat with characters? Do you want to do the character meals at the Castle and the Contemporary with Chef Mickey? And then, how much money are you prepared to spend? And all I can tell you is it's best not to think about that too hard sometimes, I guess. My husband loves hearing me say that, but... and then, I went back one too far. So what time of year are you going? That's a really, really big question and probably affects a lot of the planning, or can really affect a lot of your planning. We just went in July, and it's probably the absolute worst time of year to go. It was never a time that I would pick. It's hot, it's crowded, it's like all the things that you don't want all at once. But it was what worked for his family, and there was something else that we kind of piggybacked our trip around, and so it just worked out that way. And it was fine. It worked out fine. But if you have a choice, and you really get to pick from a wide open calendar, then trying to avoid traditional school times or school vacation times is probably your best bet. That week, you would think maybe Thanksgiving week wouldn't be so busy. It is. Even on Thanksgiving Day, it is. Christmas Day, it is. Very busy. Christmas through New Year's, we did that trip one time. We will never. That is probably the one week I would just never go again. It happened to be our second, that was the year we went 3 times. So I think we were okay with it because we knew we wouldn't get to do a lot and it was fine. But if I was only going once in the next 3 or 4 years, there was no way I would want to go that week. I've just never seen, it was like the college bar scene with the people packed up like this through every park. I've never seen anything like it. And it just is hard to stay in a happy, magical mood when there are that many people surrounding you. So it's hard for kids, adults, everybody. So those, typically, I know it's hard, especially when kids are involved, because of course you want to plan it around those times when they're off school, and you don't want to pull them out of school, or, it's like a whole other discussion that we could have. But if you can, try to avoid those. And some of those 3-day weekends may seem appealing at the outset, but they do tend to be really crowded. So almost better, I think, in my opinion, if you want to go for a shorter trip over like an extended weekend, then pull them out of school on Friday and Monday and go when it's not already another holiday, because then they're still missing. We did that one time. Of course, my kids were little at the time. But those are busy weekends too. But basically, any time that you want to go will end up being just fine. I've heard this quote that any day at Disney beats a day anywhere else. And so as long as you go in and have a positive attitude, even if it's the 4th of July and it's 105 degrees, you'll still end up having a good time. Let me see where I am here. So the next question is, how many days do you want to spend at Disney World? And then, there are a lot of variables. Are you driving or flying? How much time do you have? What is your style? Your family, your friends, whoever you're traveling with? Are you the kind of people that like to get up and get moving and keep going all day, or do you like to just kind of really be slow and relaxed and not be on a schedule? Both of those are totally fine. I think you just need to kind of have an idea so you know how much time to plan. And then are there other places in Orlando that you want to go see? SeaWorld or Legoland or any of those. Those can all have effects too. Universal is a popular choice. A lot of people want to go to Universal while they're at Disney, especially now with all the new Harry Potter stuff that they just opened in addition to what they already had. So, and then another question is, do you want to visit all 4 parks? There's no rule that says you have to go to all 4 parks, and maybe 1 or 2 of them don't really appeal to your family, or you have little kids that you think won't be as interested. So if you're not going to go to all 4, which ones will you choose? And then maybe you don't need park hoppers, which is kind of something we'll talk about a little bit later too. But I kind of have a lot of mixed feelings about park hoppers, and probably you don't need them most of the time. And then another question is, do you want to visit a water park? Like I mentioned, we did this last trip, and I've heard a lot of times of people planning their vacations so they do a couple of park days and then they take a water park day. And I never thought that sounded like much of a break or very relaxing, and now that we actually kind of did it, I wish we had had time to do that more, because it really was nice, and it would have been nice in the middle of everything to go to a water park. It is a lot more relaxing than being at a theme park. So if you think that's something you want to do, it's something you want to kind of think about ahead of time. And then the big dilemma, are you going to stay on-site or off-site? That's the next big question that I ask people. And it's going to be a really hard decision to come up with. The on-site resorts do give you access to extra magic hours, which are typically an hour in the morning before the park opens to the general public and 2 hours in the evening. It used to be 3 in the evenings, and there are a lot of people who feel like it was a much better value when it was 3. The 2 hours isn't really that much of a perk. But regardless, they are open a little bit, so you get in either early or you get to stay later. If you're staying on site, you can utilize the Magical Express, which is the bus that takes you to and from the airport. So if you have flown in, you don't have to worry about renting a car. You just get on the bus. They take you right to your resort. You have free parking. If you did drive and you have a car and you're staying on site, you'll get free parking. Or you'll have free transportation, obviously, from your resort. They'll have buses, depending on what resort you're at, maybe a boat. Your magic bands, these little lovely things, are free if you're staying on site. They come as part of your package. And they do, if you want to set them up that way, have charging privileges. So you literally can wear this and you can walk into a store or a restaurant and you can buy whatever you want just by swiping your magic band. These things are really cool and really kind of creepy at the same time. We'll talk more about that later. They'll deliver merchandise to your room. So if you go into a store and you buy something that you don't want to carry it around all day, they will happily take it to your resort for you. And then, a lot of people really like it because it really does feel more inclusive, that you're really submerged in the Disney experience. You're just there the whole time. On the other hand, staying off-site, often they do offer free transportation. If not, it may be a minimal cost. Or if you really have to park at Disney, it's $17 a day, which sounds kind of expensive, but if you've been in downtown Chicago, it's usually significantly more than $17 to park, maybe for a couple of hours. You only pay the parking one time a day, so if you go to different parks, doesn't matter, you have your receipt, you pay it once a day. Off-site resorts tend to be less crowded as a general rule, or tend to feel a little more open. Many of them, not all, obviously. You can get more space for less money. We stayed at a condo that we have found that is off-site. It's a 3-bedroom condo with a kitchen and a washer and dryer, and we were getting that room for about $150 a night. So that's significantly cheaper than if we had to stay on site and get 2 rooms or a villa, some of which run $900 a night. But of course you get less of the Disney submersion, but you do have accessibility to other places. So if you're going to get groceries, it's a little bit easier because if you're off site, usually you've rented a car, so you have a little bit more accessibility that way. So it's really kind of either or. Our family has done both, and for a long time we really felt like on-site was the only way to go, and if we're going to Disney, we're going all out because we want this to be this way. And then we had that 4th baby, and Disney does not accommodate large families very well. There just aren't a lot of rooms that we fit in. They only allow 5 people. So once she turned 3, they stopped letting us stay in a lot of the rooms, and so we had to find another alternative. And then once we went to the off-site, we realized that we really kind of liked that. We felt like it's like a mile away. So it's as close as many of the on-site resorts. We don't usually use the extra magic hours. We actually are more likely to go to a park that's not offering them on the theory that the parks with those extra magic hours will be more crowded that day because more people will be going to them. And that is a theory that has worked very well for us. That's a strategy that's worked. So for the time being, we've gone to off-site, but as the kids start leaving home and don't want to go to Disney anymore, that could always change. And then there's food. Disney's really good and really known for the food. And these are all things that sadly I took pictures of the last time I was there. I was taking pictures of my food. But the Tonga toast is one of the famous things you see up there in the corner, school bread, and that was a lunch that I had in somewhere in Epcot. Morocco, thank you. Not a place that my husband normally would have chosen, but his parents were in charge of lunch that day, so we got to go there. So food at Disney. One of the best parts of going to Disney World can be the food, if you're someone who likes to eat a lot on vacation. There are a lot of places to choose from. There are counter service restaurants, there are table service restaurants, there's character dining that we talked about. The table service, depending on where it is, you almost always need that advanced reservation. And a lot of these places will book 180 days out. It's kind of insane. People will stay up until midnight, 180 days before the day they want to go, and will get on the phone or have their travel agent get on the phone or whatever it takes. Now that Disney has moved everything online. I've had a lot of luck, even in like the last week before we're going. I get online and see if there are reservations available, and a lot of times people have canceled. So if you've heard about how you've got to make these reservations in advance and you'll never get in if you don't, and it's hard, but it's far from impossible. We got reservations at Be Our Guest, which is the new restaurant. It's like not super new anymore, I guess. But it's one of the newer restaurants at the Magic Kingdom, and I think it was like a week before we went that I got that reservation. So, you know, people, as they get closer to their dates, their plans change, and so they cancel their reservations and things open up. So that's kind of a big part of it, though, for a lot of people, and that's one of the things that a lot of people want to ask me about is restaurant recommendations. And I certainly have some that I would suggest, and we can talk about those later, too, but it really kind of comes down to, again, you know, how your family is. A table service meal is probably going to take about 2 hours, and that can be a lot of time when you're trying to get around the park and do fun things. Disney offers a dining plan, and so we've had it and we've not had it. And one of the times we didn't have it, I tried to keep track of what we spent to see how it added up to what we had spent when we bought it. It was about even. It really was. So you, of course, spend more money on food than you think you're going to during the day. If you are, so I went through this. Do you need a dining plan? First question, is it free? If it's free as part of a package, which we'll talk more about later too, but generally speaking, if it's free, why not? Of course you would want to take it. Are you scheduling lots of meals? Are you making a lot of those reservations? Are you wanting to get into a lot of those really more popular restaurants or character meals? Then if you are, it's probably worth having the dining plan because you probably will come out ahead. Some of those sit-down restaurants can start to get really pricey and can throw off how much you're spending out of pocket. We actually went to a character meal when we did not have a dining plan. And I will never forget the look on my husband's face when the bill for $280 came. And it was 6 of us for a buffet. But if we'd been on the dining plan, that would have been included, and we would have spent way less than $280 to get that credit. So it kind of depends on what you think you're going to do. And then, do you have a large family or do you have young children? If you have a large family, a dining plan or free dining might be a really good deal for you. If you have young children, it also might be a good deal because 3 and under will get to eat free in a lot of places, or you can just out of pocket buy them a kid's meal, which tends not to be expensive, or share your meal with them and not have to buy them anything. So, you know, if it's a couple of adults and a couple of young children, it might be a really good way to save some money too. So are these things worth it? If you have looked into Disney or been there before, you've heard about these things. Fast passes, yes, they're worth it. They don't cost anything. They're free. They're included in your admission. Universal does not do that. They have a front-of-the-line pass, but you do have to pay for it. And I think, I haven't been to Six Flags in a long time, but somebody I'm sure can tell me, I think you have to pay extra for. So I know this is kind of confusing to some people because they hear Fast Pass and they think it's going to cost them money, but it doesn't. It's free. Disney has just changed the system for how they work, but we can talk about that more. So yes, Fast Passes are worth it. Yes, you want to get online and set them up 30 days in advance of your trip because it's well worth it, especially for some of the more popular attractions. Extra Magic Hours, which are a resort perk. Are they worth it? Maybe. I think it just kind of depends. We have used them when we have stayed on site, but like I mentioned, we've also avoided those parks that have extra magic hours and made our strategy to go to different parks, and that has worked very well for us. Even that dreaded week of Christmas that we went, that was the strategy we used. We were staying on site, and we still used that strategy of avoiding those parks, and I think we're able to get a lot more done because we did. There were parks that closed that week by 10 a.m. because they were at capacity, and we never were in a park that closed. So we were always at a different park that day. Park hoppers may be worth it and they may not. Again, it kind of comes down to what you think you're going to do. Our family tends to go and spend about 12 to 14 hours in the park without leaving. We kind of go until we're all ready to drop, and then that's it. We have tried we're going to go back to our resort and rest for a while, and it doesn't work because by the time we get back to the resort, we're done, and nobody wants to go back to a park. Park hoppers are an extra $60 per ticket. So like with our family, that's $360. It's like another ticket that we may or may not really utilize, so we usually don't buy them. Travel agents will push you on them, Disney will push you on them, but you don't always really need it. Photo packages, Disney offers some photo packages, and I used to be a real skeptic about those, and I didn't think that they were worth it. But we've gotten up a couple of times, and it has been nice because they do ride photos, and they do all sorts of, they have photographers everywhere that will take photos for you, and if you're trying to buy those individually, they add up really quickly. If you buy the photo package, you can get a discount on it if you buy it in advance. And then it's just downloadable pictures, and you get the agreement, and you can do whatever you want with them. You can take them to Walgreens and blow them up and print them or edit, or they just become yours. They're all yours. So again, it kind of depends. We did get a photo package this last trip because my husband's parents were with us, and that was a first. And it was well worth it. What I talked about being creepy is that there are pictures, and I'll show them to you. Actually, it may be coming up in just a second. I'll show them to you where the pictures just showed up on my online account by virtue of me being on the ride with the Magic Band. That was it. So it's a little kind of spooky to me. I mean, it's great. I think it's wonderful technology. It's really cool. But there are moments where you're like, wait a minute, Disney really knows. Like, Disney probably knows I'm here right now, what we're doing. And then advanced, those ADRs, those dining reservations, yes, they're definitely worth it. Especially if you're planning to eat in a place that's popular, then, I mean, it's a total necessity. When we went to be our guests that time at Magic Kingdom, it was in July, and we walked up and checked in, and somebody else came up and said, do you have any openings? And they said, no, we don't. And I said, oh, well, when do you have to make reservations? Or, if we made, when could we get a reservation for? And the cast member looked up, she goes, well, you might be able to get in by November. So you really do need them ahead of time. Budget. I know my husband is back there dying that I put this in here at all. I don't really know what to say too much about budget. Expect to spend more than you think. But that doesn't mean that there aren't lots of ways you can save money. I'm going to pass a couple of these out. I don't have enough for everybody, so you might have to share.
Can we make copies?
Or Alyssa can go make copies too if... Here. I don't think it's super important, but I might need a few more. So this is, I'm sharing with you a spreadsheet that because like I said, I tend to obsess and overplan. So this is a spreadsheet that I worked up when we were first planning this most recent trip. And I was trying to figure out where are we going to buy tickets, what tickets are we going to buy, what makes the most sense for us. There are many different places you can buy tickets. You can buy them through Disney, or you can buy them through some authorized resellers. I don't know a lot about a whole bunch of them other than Undercover Tourist. That was one I knew about and trusted. So that was one that I compared to. And so I went through and I worked up this spreadsheet for our family because we have a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old, and in Disney terms, those are adults. So anything over 10 is considered an adult. So I kind of did the math and just figured out where we would be and whether we needed park hoppers and what would happen if we added the water park option. And if we didn't add the water park option to our passes, but we decided to go to a water park for one day like we did, how much would that cost if we just paid out of pocket? I just tried to look at all the different possibilities. So what we ended up doing in the end was this one right here. We bought the 4-day park hoppers, which came with a free 5th day, which Disney was also offering at the time, so that wasn't a huge perk. But they were about $100 cheaper through Undercover Tourist. And when I'm planning Disney vacation, every 5, 10, 15, 50, whatever, I don't care, it all adds up. So of course I was going to buy them there. Those tickets came in the mail just as fast as Disney's would have. I was able to link them to my account on Disney just like I would any other. I mean, they were the exact same tickets. There was no issues with them whatsoever.
Undercover Tourist is?
Undercover Tourist is an authorized reseller. Did I not say that?
I don't know.
Oh, you weren't listening. It's okay. It's a website. You can go to their website. They actually have tickets for a lot of different places, not just Disney, but they are an authorized Disney reseller. And what's interesting about this is that what happened to us was before we even started using our passes at Disney, we realized that we were going to go to the water park at least one day. And I had, by the way, I bought the park hoppers. I know I said that I don't think you need them, but I had my in-laws with me on this trip. And I knew my in-laws were not going to do 12 and 14-hour days in the park. So we figured having the park hoppers this time was a good idea.
So what is a park
knowing
hopper?
the family. So the park hopper allows you to go from into multiple parks on the same day. Sorry, I didn't explain that. So otherwise, you can only use your pass. If you have a regular base pass for however many days, you can only use it once a day. And it's not like some people will say, well, we're going to go to the parks 4 days, or I'm going to buy a 5-day pass, and we're going to use 2 of those days on one day. Disney is smarter than that. They won't allow that. Your pass will not scan when you go through, and they won't let you in. So if you are planning to visit more than one of the parks on the same day, you have to have the park hopper. You can add the park hopper at any time during your vacation, but it always costs $60. So if you add it on the last day, you're still spending $60. If you add it on the first day, you're spending $60. It does not matter. They don't care. You can upgrade your pass. If you have a regular pass, you can add the park hopper at any time, but it's $60 no matter what. So if you have 1 day left and you're like, well, I'm just coming here tomorrow and I want to, doesn't matter, it's $60. Still cheaper than paying a separate day's admission. Does that make sense? You're looking really confused.
Well, I guess, like you had mentioned, going to the resort, taking a nap. So, like, if I have a Magic Kingdom ticket, I can go to Magic Kingdom, go back to my hotel, and go back to Magic Kingdom?
Back to Magic Kingdom.
Without a park hopper?
Yes, without a park hopper, yes. You can go to the same park. You can go in and out of the same park that way, no problem. But if you were at the Magic Kingdom in the morning and you went back to take a nap and swim, and then you wanted to go to Epcot that night, then you need a park hopper. And this is important too when you're making dining reservations, because sometimes what will happen is maybe you really want to eat at Cinderella's Castle, but the only day that you can get a reservation is a day that you were planning to go to another park. So now you either have to, or maybe you haven't even thought about which parks you're planning yet. You know, it's kind of which comes first. Like, are we going to plan our parks first? Are we going to plan our meals first? So it's kind of all part of that process. But if that happens to you a lot, then maybe the park hopper is worth it. Or you say, we really want to go this day here, but we really want to eat at this restaurant, then maybe it's worth it to get the park hopper. I'm just saying that generally speaking, unless you're doing a lot of stuff like that, I think it's a really good way to cut down on the expense. You know, because for 4 people, I mean, it's $60 no matter what age the person is on the ticket. So for a family of 4, that's, help me here, $240 that you could save just like that by not having the park hopper. And maybe you're done anyways, you know. We bought them there was one trip where we had them and we never used them. And that was when I kind of went, wait a minute, this is silly. We spent $200, at that time we were 50 and we had 5 people who were buying tickets for them. We just spent $250 on nothing. We didn't use them at all. So, going back to what happened to us, before we ever stepped foot inside of a park, we arrived at Disney World on Wednesday night, and we knew that we were going to go to Blizzard Beach the next day. And so, the first thing that we did when we got into Orlando is we went down to downtown Disney, and we went to guest relations, and I went in and I asked if we could upgrade our passes with the Water Parks and More option, because I had done the math, and I knew it was going to cost me $300 if we went in one day. But I was pretty sure it was going to be a little bit cheaper if I just upgraded the pass I already had. And it was $26 per person to upgrade our pass. Where if you look, our admission would have been $45, or was it $53? I can't really see. So it's like half the price. And the reason was because we already had that pass and the park hopper, so it was less of an upgrade. Does that make sense? So that kind of surprised even me, because I expected it to be a little bit more than it was. The other thing about the water park then, when we added that, was that we actually had then 5 days of water park admissions. So we had 5 days of theme park admissions with a park hopper, so you could go back and forth between parks all you wanted. And then we also had, separately, 5 water park admissions. I'm really sad to say we didn't use them. We used the one. And those do not work like park hoppers. We could have gone, though, Blizzard Beach in the morning and Typhoon Lagoon in the afternoon and used 2 of our admissions. So it is a good value. It's a good way to stretch out a vacation and to be there a little bit longer without adding a whole lot extra expense and kind of going at a slower pace. It just depends on how many days you have available. Most people don't have 8 to 10 days to go just sit in Orlando. But that's one way that you can do that. So we have a couple of money saving tips. Staying off site is a big one. I am a huge proponent of being on site. I'm not trying to cost Disney any money. I think being on site has lots and lots of advantages, but it really is going to cost less money to stay off site. I can't think of probably any circumstance where it wouldn't. It just depends on what you're looking to do. So staying off site is one. Taking food into the parks. They allow coolers, so which I think is also fairly unusual in this day and age. But they do allow you to bring a cooler, and they of course will check it when they check everything that you bring into the park. But you can take food in, and we have done that. We've taken food in for lunches and for snacks. We freeze bottles of water, and we put them in a cooler and take them in. And I also take some of those little drink packet things sometimes, so if the kids want lemonade or fruit punch, we have the cold water, and we can add those. And, you know, a bottle of water is like $3. It's so silly to buy water at Disney World. So we take them in, or you can also get free water at counter service restaurants. You can ask for a glass of water, and they'll give you a glass of water for free. But if you go to a park, you'll pay like $3 for the bottle. Splitting meals is another really good way to save money. A lot of the meals are big. My husband and I laugh that we feel kind of like an old couple when we do it, but especially if it's hot, you don't need sometimes a really big meal, so that's another way you can save some money. Buying the tickets from Undercover Tourist, or there are other resellers. Like I said, I just don't have experience with them, so I'm not sure. If you're looking at somebody else, I would just try to research and Google them and make sure they seem reputable. We got a Disney Visa a couple of years ago, and you earned Disney dollars. So this last time when we went to guest relations that night, in addition to upgrading our passes, I also then got a little card, and then you just call in, you call the Visa, and they credit however many reward dollars you have to that card, and then you can use it wherever at Disney. It was kind of embarrassing because when I called, the guy's like, wow, you have a really remarkable amount of Disney dollars accrued here. But we did much souvenir shopping and paid for a couple of meals and stuff like that with it. So again, every little bit helps. So that helped eat away at some of that. And then we do drive. We have driven the last couple of times. I know that's not for everybody, but it is definitely a way to save money, especially if you have a lot of children like we do. And we, this last time, also got a Florida Sun Pass, which is their toll system. I think we put $20 on it, and we used the $20 while we were there. It's like empty now, so that was perfect. I'm not sure what we would have spent in tolls, but it was more than $20, and that just kind of helped. All those little things that help out. Okay, I'm getting to the end of this, I promise. This is from the Disney website. If you haven't, I highly suggest you go into the DisneyWorld.com and start plugging and playing with things and looking around at resorts, because I really believe, and there are a lot of us out there that believe this, that and give them your information. Let them know your name and your email, because Disney will send you discounts. And this has happened to me so many times where I'm playing around and I'm, you know, sometimes it's just kind of for fun, or sometimes we're kind of looking at, oh, we think we might go these dates. And the next thing you know, I have an email in my inbox that has a PIN code for a discount that my travel agent doesn't have. I have to give her that PIN code in order if she's booking the trip for us. So I'm not saying it's going to always happen or that it's perfect, but it happens enough that it's talked about on the discussion boards, and I think it really, there's probably something to it. So it's worth a try. But I was looking around, and so you see the breakdown. Disney wants you to stay for a long time. They don't want you to come for just a couple of days. And so the tickets get cheaper, the days get cheaper, the longer the pass you buy. I didn't print, if you Google Disney tips, you'll find like 1,000 different lists, and so I didn't want to bore you by printing that out. But one of them on here does point out, too, that if you can buy a non-expiring option. So here it says a 10-day, no expiration park hopper ticket is just over twice the price of 2 3-day park hopper tickets. So bear with me here. So if you are taking some short trips, or you think you're going back again ever, because non-expiring really does mean non-expiring, then sometimes it can be more affordable to buy that kind of in advance. The year we went 3 times, we knew we were going to go twice, so we bought annual passes. And then we ended up kind of sliding in that 3rd trip. And we figured out, I think we got about 18 days in the parks, which worked out to roughly $30 per person. So we felt like we really got our money's worth, but we bought those annual passes because we knew we were going twice. So sometimes you can kind of tweak the system that way a little bit. If you know you're going to go back. On one of our trips, when our 3-year-old she's 4, she had just turned 3, so it was the first time we had to buy her a ticket. I still had passes, because I'm a hoarder, from 1998, no, we weren't married in 98. When was that trip? 2003. They were passes from 2003. And back in 2003, when you bought a multiple day pass at Disney, it just never expired. And so we had bought them, and we had a day left on them. And we had never used them, and I had them tucked away in a drawer. I took them into guest relations, and they looked up the value of what that was, and they were each worth like $90. And so we were able to apply that toward the pass we had to buy for her. So there are lots of, you know, if you have passes, or if you know anybody that has passes tucked away from like prior to, I think it was 2005 when they changed that. Now the passes, when you buy them, they expire after 14 days. From the first day you use them, you have 14 days. That's it. They're done. Unless you pay to add the non-expiring option, which is not cheap, but again, if you're going to take a couple of 4-day trips or 3-day trips, it can be better. You also avoid, you know, next June they're going to raise their prices again. They do it almost every June. So you also get ahead of that a little bit. This shows what I was talking about earlier with the park hopper and the water park option. You can add either one of them for $60, but if you add them both, it's $86, which is why when I went to upgrade our tickets, it was $26 per. And then this is the memory maker that I also talked about a little bit. They have changed this. If you've been to Disney, I would say, well, for me, I mean, it had only been a year, and it was completely different than the last time we were there. So now it's called Memory Maker, and it is all-inclusive. It includes every photo they take of you, whether you know they're taking it or not. And it is just available as a download. There's no more sending you, they used to send you a CD with your pictures. There's no more of that. It is just a download that's available for a certain amount of time after your trip. You download the pictures, and then they're yours to use however you want. If you buy it in advance, it's $149. Then we'll start using it for 3 days. So when we arrived on Wednesday night, and I upgraded our passes, and I added the water parks, and got my Visa card, I also bought the memory maker. And at first the woman said to me, okay, that'll be, 200 and something. I said, well, wait, I thought it was 150 or about 150. She said, well, that's only if you're not going to use it for a few days. Well, I'm not going into a park until Sunday. I said, oh, okay, no problem. And so she changed it, and we paid the $150, and we didn't start using it until Sunday. So they just, there's an incentive to order it early. And I got some great pictures off of it. Do I think it's worth doing every trip? No, I don't, honestly. Unless you're someone who likes to take a whole lot of pictures with their photographers, or if you do a lot of meet and greets. Yes?
If we're going with our extended family and we all have our magic bands linked, and we buy one memory maker,
yes,
can we share that?
Yes, and one person is designated as kind of in charge of it and is able to download the photos, but everyone will get their photos added to it. That's an excellent question. So like when my kids, actually this picture here with the kids on test track with my father-in-law, I wasn't with them, but they were there. They didn't do anything. They just rode the ride, and there's the picture showed up in my account. Kind of cool, kind of creepy. Actually, it is cool, and I'll tell you, I was nervous because it's still pretty new now. So I was nervous when I really wanted to be sure I got the photo. I went to the kiosk at the end of the ride and had them scan my. Well, you can have it get it attached to your magic band. I did not do that right away because we weren't staying on site. Things were a little bit different because we bought our magic bands and we kind of added stuff to them as we went. So I eventually did get that all added, but I wish I had done it sooner because it would have been easier from the beginning.
So we have magic bands from our last trip. Our extended family does not. So we're going to have to buy we're staying off site, so we're going to have to buy the magic bands for them at Downtown Disney the day before. And then you can go in and...
Yes, and when you buy them, they add them to the accounts. When you buy them, have their tickets, and they will just link them up at the cash register, and it's done. And let me tell you a little story about that. I called because I thought I was really smart. We were in Florida. We were a couple hours away from Orlando. I knew I wanted to get to guest relations that night. So I called. I couldn't find on the internet exactly how late they were open. And I wanted to know where I could get the magic bands. And so I called. I hate talking to people on the phone, even if it's Disney. It's really nice when you call, you get the Tinkerbell and all that. But so I called and I talked to this woman. I first asked her how late guest relations at Downtown Disney was open. I personally try to go to that one over some of the ones in the parks because they tend to have more knowledgeable people there. And I read all the time, people get different answers from different cast members at different guest relations. So, but the consensus seems to be they're pretty good down there, and they usually, like that example I gave with those old passes. When I was in line that day, there was a guy, kind of, okay, what are you doing? Because the line was getting kind of long. So I explained to him, I have these old passes, I'm going to just try to I'm just going to try to apply toward a new pass. He goes, oh, you can't do that. Well, I knew I could because I had read it on the internet a whole bunch of times. So I was like, okay, you're right, I can't. But as soon as I got to the counter and explained to her what I was doing, she's like, oh yeah, that's no problem. And just look it up and see how much value was left. And she did it and no problem. So I like going there because I feel like they generally know what they're talking about. So I called and I asked the woman how late they were open, and she's like, Googling it. I'm thinking, well, I could have Googled it. Like, I'm calling you because. So she finally came up with, she thought she was pretty sure what time. And I asked her, where can I buy magic bands? We're not staying on site, but I want to buy some. And she says, oh, you can buy those at any retail location. Anywhere they're selling anything, they'll be selling magic bands, which made perfect sense to me. So I thought, okay, that sounds good. So I went to guest relations. We got into town. We only had like an hour till everything was closing at Downtown Disney. And so I got in, I upgraded our passes, I got a Visa card, I went over to World of Disney, to the big store that sells everything, and immediately just found a woman and said, I'm looking for magic bands. And she says, oh, you have to buy those at guest relations. Okay. So the woman on the phone told me, okay, So we left and we went to guest relations, and I stood in line again, and I got to the counter and I said, I'm trying to buy magic bands. Oh, you have to go buy those at, and it was a totally different store. So, really and truly, even though they work there, and we want to think that Disney has the best customer service in the world, because they do have great customer service, you will sometimes get wrong answers. So if you think maybe they're telling you the wrong answer, ask somebody else, or keep trying. So we found them at Pin Traders, is where they were. Now, I don't know when you're going, and maybe they'll have expanded them into more locations, but Pin Traders had them. We did see them in the parks at several places. You could wait till you got inside of a park and do it then too, but I wanted to do it ahead of time, so, and you probably do too. Which leads me right into, what are these magic bands you're talking about? If you watched the middle, if you paid any attention at all, you probably know that Disney has switched over to these magic bands. And they do serve as your park ticket. They are your Fast Pass ticket. They have your Fast Passes on there. The photo locating, like I mentioned, it can be your credit card. If you're staying on site, they can link it up to a credit card for you, and so you can make charges on it. And if you're staying on site, will also be your room key. So it becomes your all-in-one. They're not required yet. I don't know that they'll ever be totally required, but I do think you'll see them become much more standard. And I think I saw way more people with them than without in the parks, for sure. They're about $13 each, and so we did go ahead and buy them for our family using our Disney Visa points. And if you have Disney Infinity, there are a few things you can unlock on that by putting the magic band down, so the kids thought that was kind of cool. I liked it because I'm always the mom who has to carry everybody's passes in the park, and I didn't have to do that anymore. Everybody had their own band, and they were good.
Are they very secure?
They are very secure. My 4-year-old never lost hers. She did take it off once, and we had a little talk about that, and if she was going to take it off, it definitely had to come to me. And we never, I can't believe I'm saying this, we did not lose one, ever. I did, after lecturing my children, because you could buy these little accessories. Of course, I was the first one to lose mine, so I don't have the little Mickey. These are cute, they're fun, they're not super expensive, but I can't say that they last super well. But it was a good way, like I know for sure, even without scanning it, I know this is my daughter's magic band, I know this one is mine. You can also, because our 4-year-old, they do go pretty small, and they are waterproof. You can wear them in the pool, the water park, all of that, shower. They'll go pretty small, but you'll have that in there. You can take off this outer part, so you see the difference here. This is what we did for my 4-year-old. So we took off that outer part for her, and then it just fit her a little bit better. I was real skeptical about the magic bands. I just didn't think, and especially because we weren't staying on site, I didn't know that we would really have the best benefit from them, but I did really like them in the end.
One credit card link to.
You can link what, yeah, and you know, you don't have to do it to all of them, so like the kid, I mean, it's up to you whether or not to give a child charging privileges or not. But you can. It's scary, but you actually can if you want to.
If you lose one, how easy is it to get it stopped so nobody's charging on it?
Apparently, it's no problem whatsoever. I would just go to guest relations or possibly into one of the stores where they're selling them, and probably guest relations I would go to right now because it's still kind of new, and they get it all taken care of really quickly. I'm not joking. Really and truly, they probably know, like, oh, these magic bands are in Pekin right now. I mean, I just really think they're like, it's kind of scary. I kind of joke about it. I haven't heard this, but my suspicion would be these would be really good for lost children. I think they'd be able to narrow down where a kid is pretty quickly. I mean, they don't advertise that, but I can't imagine that isn't the case. If they know I'm on Splash Mountain when I'm coming down the hill, and I mean, it's not like I got other people's photos in there just in case to cover it. It's just the photo I'm in. Like, they know it to that. They're able to pinpoint it like that. So, but I wouldn't be worried about losing them and being able to, you know, even if somebody had gotten it and been able to charge some stuff, I think that they would make good on that. I wouldn't worry about it. I would just go as quickly as possible and talk to them in guest relations about it. Guest relations are always your friend.
If you already purchased your tickets like last May or whatever, and they didn't have them.
Yeah, they didn't have them then. They just started in the fall.
So what do you do when you do eventually go? Which whenever we decide to go, do you have to buy them then?
You don't have to. You don't have to buy them at all. If you bought your tickets as part of a package, I don't know what. You just bought them separate. I mean, no, it's totally up to you. And you know, and you don't have to buy them for everybody. If one person wants one, and you think maybe it'd be easier for the kids, you could buy one. But no, you do not. You do not have to buy them at all. I'm pretty sure if they make it where you have to have them, they're going to have to make them free, or something's going to have to change there. We liked them, but they're not necessary.
But you get them if you get the package.
If you are staying on site and you book a package, you will get them. They'll be mailed to you in a nice little box, and they'll have your names printed on them. Annual pass holders have a different kind of band that they get that also they print your name back here. It's actually printed on the underside, so it's not like it's out and visible. But they print names on them if you order them from Disney. If you booked a package through Disney, you'll get it with each person's name. Yes.
Once you purchase it, is it yours forever?
Yes.
I mean, unlike, you can reuse it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Which is another reason why we went ahead and did it, because I figured, I have a feeling we'll probably go back. So we'll be able to use them. Fast passes. So we kind of touched on this a little bit. Disney has done this system, and now they've changed it recently. So again, if you have been, but you haven't been in the past year, it has changed quite a bit from how it used to be. It used to be that there were kiosks at each ride, and you would do the mad dash if it was first thing in the morning and it was a popular ride or whatever. And you would go to the kiosk and you would have to have everyone's tickets, and you'd put them in and you'd get these little paper passes. And then they started changing some of that, and so now those kiosks are all gone. And they don't have those at all anymore. Almost all the fast passes, well, they're all done online. That doesn't mean you have to have a phone. They have kiosks in the park. But you're really better off doing them in advance. Because here's what happens. If you're staying on site, you can book your fast passes 60 days in advance. If you're not staying on site, you can book them 30 days in advance.
Could you repeat that one more time?
Yes, I can. If you are on site, you can book your fast passes 60 days in advance. If you're not on site, it's 30 days in advance. It seems like a really big advantage. It might be, but we went in July at a really busy time, and I had no trouble booking our fast passes and getting everything we wanted 30 days in advance. I was very skeptical of this new fast pass system. I was not a big fan when they changed it. We used to use maybe 6 or 7 fast passes a day. We got very adept at figuring out how to work that system, and had our whole family the kids knew how it worked. We were pretty good at it. The new system only allows you to book 3 in advance per day. After you have used those 3, you can book another one there in the park. And right now, you have to go to a kiosk, but we talk to them and ask them, and they say that within the next couple of months, you'll be able to do it on your phone. So that is coming. If you are at Epcot and at Hollywood Studios, I'm trying to think how best to explain this, the fast passes are tiered. So for example, at Hollywood Studios, you cannot get a fast pass for Toy Story Mania and Rock and Roller Coaster. You have to get one or the other. They are in the same tier. Those are probably the two most popular rides that everybody wanted fast. I know it's what we always got them for. Having said that, we rode Rock and Roller Coaster standby for the first time ever, because the standby lines really do seem, to me, in my experience, like they've gone down. I feel like, as skeptical as I was, what they have done is they've done a really good job of spreading the people around the park, and it has made all of the lines shorter. So if you don't have a fast pass, you have a much better chance of getting on a ride than you used to. I rode Peter Pan this last trip. I'd never been on that because that's always like an hour-long ride, or wait, it was not. We did not have a fast pass. But I saw people with fast passes for like Haunted Mansion at 9 in the morning, which is ridiculous to me. But I think that people, there's a couple different theories. I'll get into this, but I just think that people are booking them and using them more than maybe they were before, and they're just getting spread out, and it really is helping. So I gotta say that in the end, we were done at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're a family that's normally there until close, and at 4 o'clock the first day, we were kind of like, I think we're ready to go because we've done everything we want to do, and we're just not really used to that. But at the same time, we didn't get to ride some of our favorite rides as many times as we used to, because we used to be really good at working that system and we could get 3 or 4 rides in. It didn't really happen as much. We got on everything at least once, but not always those multiple times. So there's different strategies. And this is part of where, some people, if you're like me, just love this part of Disney planning, and this is where some others are just going to gloss over. But there's different ways to look at it. You can either try to book your fast passes for first thing in the morning. So you don't worry about any lines, whatever, it doesn't matter. And you get them over with, and then you can keep going back and checking, either at the kiosk or hopefully soon on your phone, to see what other passes are available, what other rides that you can ride with no wait. That's one strategy. The other strategy that we used, because although I was able to get our fast passes, they were usually for later in the day, so what we kind of did was, we just made sure we had fast passes for the things we really wanted to ride. We got there when the park opened, and we took advantage of the short lines that just are there when the park opens. You're just able to do a lot more. So in the first 2 hours, we might ride as many rides as we would ride almost the whole rest of the day. And we still knew that we had fast passes for the afternoon when those lines got longer, that we still had things we could go and do. We also booked fast passes in the evening sometimes, and then went to another park in the morning, because you cannot book, as of right now, but this is probably going to change soon, you can't book fast passes at 2 different parks, which to me discourages park hopping also, unless you're going with the theory like we did. You arrive early at the one park, you do whatever you can, it starts to get busy, you go to the other park, whereas in the past you wouldn't have been able to do anything. Now you can, because you have fast passes, and it doesn't matter that the lines have gotten long. So it's just kind of, there's a couple different ways to look at it. I guess that we were kind of forced into it because while we did get those passes, they were all, the people staying on site, I think the general thought right now is, well, the earlier the better. And I'm not really sure that that's the case. But when they get online and they book them, they're kind of usually just booking them earlier in the day. So what was left by the time I got there was usually afternoon, evening.
It looks like they're still an hour long.
Yes.
Are they sticklers on you better be there?
Yes, because
time?
it's electronic. And so I think they give you a little bit of a window, but it's only like 5 or 10 minutes either way. And actually, this is a screenshot of my phone. So this was our last night. We were at Magic Kingdom, and we had these 3 fast passes. And the reason I wanted to show you this was because my concern was, what happens, how does this really work if the ride is down while you have a fast pass? What do they do? Well, it happened to be raining, like unbelievably raining. Like I've never actually seen it rain like that in Orlando for 4 hours raining. And our fast pass for, what was first? Splash Mountain was supposed to be at like 4:20. And we got there and it was pouring rain, and Splash Mountain obviously was closed. I mean, it was thunder and lightning. Like, lightning was literally hitting the buildings around us. When I tell you, I've never seen a storm like that. But we're crazy and we think it's going to pass through, and so we stayed. And anyways, when it got to be whatever time, it says there 4 p.m. I feel like it was like a 4:20, but whatever. When it got past the window, so if the end time was 4:30, and it was 4:30, and the ride had been closed, when I refreshed my phone, it came up with this green stripe that now said it was valid until 12 a.m. So that impressed me, because it really did work. And then what happened is, eventually it did the same thing for Big Thunder, because it was also closed. Space Mountain, now I realize Space Mountain is an inside ride, but I have been on it before when they stopped it, and they turned on the lights, and they said, we have to halt everything because there's lightning in the area. So when there was lightning literally over our heads, I really kept thinking, well, Space Mountain has to be closed too. It has to be. But my FastPass never changed. It never alerted on my phone, and we were all the way up on the other side of the park. So eventually I realized, you know what, it's really not closed, and we're going to miss this window if we don't. And it was the one ride we hadn't ridden. So we did go over, and sure enough, it was open, and we got on at the very last minute. So that was the only ride that we did actually get on that night, because, I mean, like, really, it was testing our Disney devotion kind of rain. It was really bad. But I thought that was interesting that it did update, it did change, it knew exactly what to do, and so it was fun. Yes.
Question on the kiosks. How long does it take to wait?
The kiosk lines are horrendous. They're horrible. Which is why I mean, the cast member told us that they were testing being able to add it on your phones, that he really thought it was only a month or two away. It was just in a testing phase. So I really think, I mean, they were some of the longest lines I stood in. Quite honestly, longer than ride lines.
They're located by the ride?
To
the kiosks?
They are located in select places around the park. They're on the map. So you kind of got to find where they are. And they're not always super convenient.
So you're better off having your phone with you.
You are, because once they get that up and running, you'll just be able to add them on your phone, and hopefully that will be soon. Yeah, the kiosks were not convenient, which again I think is proof that that's not their permanent solution. You know, it can't be. I mean, they really were some of the longest lines, and I'm trying to think of where they even were. Like, there was guest relations always has them, so wherever guest relations is in the park. But they were located at some locations that used to have fast passes, that used to have the regular kiosks. So but they weren't at all of them. So they weren't it wasn't super convenient. And in fact, we added one fast pass. We just didn't add a whole bunch because we didn't need to. We really didn't. Like, we were just able to get on rides. There was no point. The line wasn't that long that I felt like we had to do it at that point in the day, whatever point it might have been. So we just didn't add a lot, which surprised me, because again, being used to using so many, I thought, you know, okay, well, we'll be adding them on later in the day, and we just really didn't.
I know we've used the FastPass for meeting characters before. Can we do it for the Frozen characters?
Yes, and in fact, that would be the very first FastPass I tried to get. So when you log on to book your FastPasses now, and I encourage you to play around with it ahead of time. You don't have to have a reservation. 30 days from today, you can go on and make a FastPass for it. Disney doesn't discriminate. They don't know whether you're coming in 30 days or not right now. So you can get on and kind of play with it. I mean, be nice and cancel it if you book it, because otherwise, you know, you're taking it from someone else. But when you get on, what it does is it asks you to pick 3 that you want, and then it asks you to prioritize those 3. And then it will come up with several different options. It will give you what it thinks are the best options for timing, or you'll see a tab, and there are a couple different options you can look at. But here's my advice to you. Regardless of, especially for something like the meet and greet with Anna and Elsa, it doesn't matter what time it gives you. As long as it's giving you a time, you book it. And then you either work with it, or you can go back in and you can ask to change the times. It's kind of weird, the system. Like, I've heard a lot of people just book them and then go back and change the times later. So you may be able to move, you know, maybe late afternoon isn't good for you. but it looks like that's all that's available with the options they give you. But once you have it in place, you go in, you find out, oh, I really can move this back. And you can play with them and step. It is going to give you 3 times close together. It's going to try to book you 3 fast passes, like the ones I showed you were like hour. And that may or may not work for you. So, but regardless, just go ahead and book them, and then you can go in and play with the time. You can also, the thing I had trouble with was you can assign different people to fast passes. I mean, I have kids who obviously weren't going to ride Tower of Terror or whatever. But what I could not figure out how to do, because you get those 3 a day, was I couldn't figure out how to separate. Like, I could get 3 for me, but I couldn't get 3 for my 9-year-old because he wasn't going to go on the same 3 as me. I'm sure you can. I just never was successfully able to do it. But I guess the fact that he didn't need 3 fast passes says a lot too. I mean, we did plenty of stuff. So it was important for the really big rides. You want to make sure you get on, you know, the Toy Story and the meet and greet and the things like that. Making sure you have those things. But it's pretty easy to get on. I mean, I would set the mine train. I would definitely book a fast pass for that because that wait never drops below 90 minutes all day long.
So I have 5 people in my family, and each one of us gets 3 fast passes.
Each one of you gets 3 fast passes. Yes, per day.
Just start out.
And so I would say this to you too. So if you have, because I considered this for a little while, like I had my in-laws along, they ended up not staying in the afternoon. Well, there was really nothing to stop me from taking their magic bands and riding again on the fast pass that I had booked for them. And Disney, I mean, Disney knows that, and Disney doesn't really care, honestly, if you do that, because it doesn't take it doesn't mess with the system. Do you know what I mean? Like that, somebody was going to ride. May as well be you, if not them. So, I mean, there are still ways to fudge with things a little bit. We used to do that with the paper fast passes. You know, I would take everybody's ticket, and we would get 6 fast passes for Rock and Roller Coaster, and the 3 of us would ride twice or something, if we didn't need them for something else. So, I mean, you can still kind of do that. Although on most of the rides, it will pop up with your name. When you scan it, there's a little screen, and it will say like, "Oh, Shannon is here." And I have heard stories of cast members being like, "Oh, you don't really look like a Robert," you know, or what. But I mean, they don't. It doesn't matter. You're not cheating the system if you're riding in
husband's fast pass. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, maybe so and so decides they don't want to ride anymore. I mean, I don't think they really care. So but you can split them up.
Only 3 a day?
Yeah.
After you use them, you can't get any more?
You can add more at either one of those kiosks or hopefully soon on your phone. You have to use the 3
you
first.
have to use the 3 first.
Yeah, so if you have a fast pass for like 9 o'clock at night, you're kind of, you know, you're probably not going to add any more than likely. So that's why I think a lot of people are trying to book them all early in the morning, thinking, well, then we'll just be able to keep adding them. Which that's one way of doing it. That's one strategy. The other way is book them for later in the day when you know it's going to be busy, and get there early in the morning when you can get on without any wait. Especially if you're not going to those headliner rides. You know, when Magic Kingdom opens, everyone is heading, I'll watch my language, heading very quickly for the mine train and for the meet and greet with Anna and Elsa. Well, if you have fast passes for that later in the day, you can go over, you know, my suggestion always when you go in is go left, because most people will go right. So when you go in, go left, and you go over into Fantasyland and Adventureland, and you can get on Splash Mountain and Thunder Mountain and Pirates of the Caribbean, and I mean, you'll ride all of those in an hour, no problem, before anyone else has gotten over there and started making that line long.
How does baby swap work with the fast passes? Because we have a 3-month-old.
This is so funny that you asked this, because I was just reading this big long thread about this earlier on one of the discussion boards, because I think they're kind of changing a little bit, or it depends on the ride, is my first answer to you, because they can be different. Our experience has always been, like for Soarin' at Epcot, we had to do, my 4-year-old, by the way, just hit the 40-inch mark this last trip when she had her higher sandals on. So we finally got to that point where, and I'm not advocating that by any means. It was not that was not our intention, but it was kind of funny that one day she was too short, and the next day, I mean, they were like, oh, no question she's tall enough. And she rode that and Splash Mountain and Thunder Mountain. So anyways, but we've done rider swap for a long time. And usually how it works is you walk up to where the line is, where the cast member is, And sometimes they make you show them the baby and sometimes they don't. Again, this is how some people get around the system, so you never know. But to err, it's best to have the baby with you. Just saying, there are lots of people who claim ride or swap who have no children around. So, and you know what's funny is like, I mean, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about some of these things because sometimes there's ways you can kind of work the system to your advantage, but then there's also taking advantage. And what happens, unfortunately, is people take advantage of things and then they go away. And so this rider switch is a good example because I think they're changing how they do it because people have been taking advantage. So typically speaking, when you have a fast pass, the theory is you don't need rider switch because you have an hour's window time where one person can go and then come out and then the other people can go. So usually if you have a fast pass, they're not going to give you a rider switch. It doesn't even, it wouldn't really be to your advantage, generally speaking. If you don't have a fast pass, you can go up, show them the baby, and they will give you a fast pass, paper fast pass. Usually lets you come back with 2 other people, but this is what I just read is changing. It might just be 1 now on certain rides. So you gotta, that's what I would be careful of. I mean, it's worked great for us because it allows, you know, my husband rides with the 3 oldest kids, and then I get to ride with 2 of them, and you know, somebody gets to ride 20. I mean, that's all changing. But so they give you that fast pass, so then one person goes and takes the baby and waits. The other person goes in the standby line, goes through. When they come out, they switch off the baby, and then you can use the fast pass, so you go basically right away. Some of the rides will let you go through the line up until the loading point, but it just kind of, like a lot of the rides don't load and unload at the same spot. So in all seriousness, I was reading this like 20-page thread about this on the Diz boards earlier because some guy was all upset that they told him he had to stay here. And it seems to kind of vary, but we've never had any trouble with it. We've utilized it several times, and really it worked to our advantage because, you know, like when I had a kid who maybe he didn't want to ride a roller coaster, so he wasn't getting to ride as many rides, but he could go on Soarin' twice because that was his favorite ride, and then he got to run it. So that kind of helped offset the fact that his siblings were getting to do more things. Like we had that worked out really well.
We hope you've enjoyed this program presented by the Pekin Public Library. For more information on library programs, please visit www.pekinpubliclibrary.org.